Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Very happy to be here. And thank you so much for that introduction. You're always, mashallah, extremely kind when you introduce me. Okay, so today, without going any further, let's start with just the idea. You know, when you move from one culture to the other, which I do a lot throughout my life. My father was in the army, in the American Army, and we traveled all over the world. And you run into things that you think is totally normal, but somebody else will see it as extremely rude. One of the things when I first came here to Kuwait, and honestly and truly, even to this day, sometimes I hear somebody make this sound, and in the back of my mind, it's like, that's rude. That's really rude. Even though for them, it has absolutely no sense of rudeness whatsoever. Um, in Kuwait and in many of the Arab countries, and I've also learned that in Turkey, sometimes when somebody wants to say no, just a simple no, no rudeness involved, they'll make a sound that's like sucking your teeth. Like, I don't know if you can hear that well, but that sound, it just means no. Just like a click of the teeth or sucking on the teeth is what we call it. But where I come from in South Carolina and in lots of parts of the United States, that is extremely rude. It's like I'm insulting someone, or I'm telling them, I'm really bothered with you. I can't stand the sound of you. Just shut up. It's ugh, and that sound of sucking the teeth is very rude in our culture. But when I come here and you're talking to someone, they'll be like, no. Instead of saying no, they'll be just that little click thing with their teeth, and that's a no. So it's amazing how many things that we consider to be absolutely normal is rude to somebody else. So I'm going to go through a few of them. Now, some of them, when I say rude, we're talking rudeness to the umpteenth degree, a very, very high class of rudeness. So I will try to be as political as I can and as careful as I can in the way that I describe what it means in another culture. So let us define rudeness. To be rude is to be discourteous, uncivilized, coarse, offensive, or even downright vulgar. So basically, the things that when somebody hears it or sees it, what they understand from it is that this is wrong. There's something intrinsically wrong with what you're doing. And what you're doing is in some way, shape, or form an insult to me, okay? Or an insult to those around you. So one of the things that can be considered rude is hand gestures. In many countries, hand gestures are a normal thing, a normal part of a life. My family, our background, we go back to Italians, and talking with the hands is something that we do. You have to talk with your hands. If you're not moving your hands, you're not talking. But some of the gestures that people make have different meanings across cultures. For instance, in the United States, if you want to say okay, you might use the gesture that's on your screen. This simply means okay, that everything's fine, or I agree, or sure, let's do it. Whatever it is, this is an okay gesture. However, if you're in Brazil, this gesture is meant to symbolize a body orifice, and it's a way of calling them this orifice. So basically, the place where we defecate, that hole is being symbolized in this hand gesture. So if you use this in Brazil and you actually mean to say okay, they're going to have a completely different understanding, and you might have a big problem. Another one, if you are calling for somebody and you're using one finger and you're telling them, come here, come here. This gesture in some places is considered offensive, like in the Philippines. Or as an American, I might use the whole hand, how can I get it with the camera? I might use the whole hand and I might do a come here type of gesture. And this is absolutely normal in America. But if you are in a place like the Middle East, you would be like this way with your hand. Okay. I'm trying to see how to get it with the camera. With your hand down, telling the person, come here, instead of the hand facing up. The hand facing up is like calling an animal. So even though we wouldn't even think about it, it's something that's so natural, so common in our own culture that we wouldn't think about it. But when we're in a different culture and we use this hand gesture, we're actually insulting the person that we're dealing with. Another one, this one is called the mutsa, and it is the equivalent of a middle finger in the United States, the most traditional insulting gesture among Greeks. And I'm going to go into this one a little bit more in a couple of slides. Crossing your fingers. Some people consider this to be just, in the West, we'll say, oh, I'll cross my fingers, meaning what? Meaning you're hoping and you're kind of like putting it so that it's something that you want to happen. So you're hopeful that it will happen, and you're crossing your fingers as a form of superstition that by crossing your fingers, this thing is going to happen. However, if you are in Vietnam, it depicts a woman's genitalia. If you're pointing it at someone, it's the same as calling them a bad word, a very bad word. So you're talking about that part of the woman by using this. So it is extremely offensive to them. Even though, again, I mean, it's amazing how many things that are just so normal to us that we don't think twice about. And yet here, the crossing your fingers is an extremely, extremely offensive gesture if you're in Vietnam. Also among the hand gestures, and the Italians are fabulous at their hand gestures, in Italy, India, and Pakistan, this is a very offensive gesture. Essentially, it's an invitation to do a rude act against oneself or one's family. And this is really funny because when I first came to Kuwait, I was talking with someone, and when we were talking, they were talking about someone else, and they're like, this person is very, very cheap. And when they were saying cheap, they were using this exact same gesture. They were pushing against the teeth. And I'm looking at them thinking, oh my God, what are they doing? And I'm assuming that they understand that this gesture to someone like me has an extremely rude meaning. But for the people in this part of the world, that gesture of flicking the teeth, doing back and forth with the teeth like that, the top teeth, it means this person is cheap. Imagine, most of the world tends to understand this as a rude gesture, a large part of the world. Anybody who's got any dealings or has watched movies having a lot of Italians in it will know that this is considered a rude gesture. But if your culture has an entirely different meaning for this gesture, you're not going to think twice using it. So when they did this, they flicked their teeth saying the person was cheap. I was shocked. But then later I found out and I realized, oh, no. In this culture, it has a completely different meaning. So it really is amazing. Now, with the hand gesture that I told you before, with the hand out. Now, in America, if you go to somebody and you're angry with them, you might do like a handout type of thing. You just kind of hand at the person. And that is just like talk to the hand. I don't want to deal with you. But this one, among the most complex of hand gestures, is as elaborate and ancient as a Japanese tea ceremony. Perhaps the oldest offensive hand signal still in use. The mutsa originated in ancient Byzantium. Imagine how old this hand gesture is, where it was custom for criminals to be chained to a donkey and displayed on the street. There, local town people would add to the humiliation of the person who's chained up by rubbing dirt, feces, and ashes, which is mutsos in medieval Greek, into their faces. Now that we have modern sewage systems and people are no longer following these kinds of laws, and it's not easy for, someone to do this, what's happened is that the mutsa became a symbolic stand-in for this kind of behavior. and it's often accompanied by commands including porta or orse, which is like take this or there you go. Over the years, it has gotten more connotations to the point that now if somebody, a Greek, were to do this gesture to you with the 5 fingers extended, they are suggesting 5 sexual acts that the person who's doing it would like to perform with your sister who is willing to perform them. Imagine how much meaning there is in this hand gesture. So if you are an American and you're doing a talk to the hand type of gesture, what you mean is, I don't want to listen to what you have to say anymore. But if you do this to somebody who's Greek, or you do it in Greece, you're telling them something entirely different than I don't want to talk to you anymore. So we have to be very careful. And before we travel to another country, or when we're dealing with people from other cultures, we should try to learn, try to understand, because we might insult them, or they might do something in a hand gesture or say something that we consider to be highly offensive, and they don't recognize that they're doing it. So we should not get as upset by it, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand that this hand gesture has an entirely different meaning. Again, like the hand gesture that somebody did in front of me where they were talking about a cheap person, to me, it was completely different. So another thing that's known is in a South American gesture indicating stupidity. So it's like taking the fist and putting the fist on the head. This is considered to be stupid, okay? And the more you do, you put like a comical overbite and you make it, with some grunts and so forth, then you're making it even a stronger gesture of saying that this person is really and truly a complete idiot, okay? So this would be something in much of South America. This one also, when I came to the Middle East, it is something that again shocked me, because here in the Middle East, this gesture with the hand, what does it mean? It means wait, hold on, wait a minute. In a few minutes, I'll be with you. It's like a pest. It means like, just hold on. It's not a big deal. It's not considered rude. And, a mother might do it to her child, just 1 minute, wait. But if this gesture is in Italy or in some parts of Europe or some parts of South America, it means to ask, what the are you saying? Or what the do you want? It's not just impatience. It's a rude type of impatience with the person. So if you're dealing with a Middle Easterner, an Arab, and they're telling you to wait, and they use this gesture, and you're from a place like South America or Italy, and you see this gesture, you might be very highly offended. But in actuality, they're just telling you, just wait a minute. And it's not considered impatient. It's not considered bad. It's actually just a simple wait, just 1 minute. I'll be with you. Something very simple. And again, it's something even a parent would do with their child. Unlike in Italy, where a parent might not so easily do this one with their child. Another hand gesture. Now, in the West, we do this, like this. You put to your eyes and then you point to the person. That means I'm watching you. So you do this one, and it means I'm watching you. But similar to I'm watching you, but a little bit more rude. In business, it's important to let your associates know that you can't be taken advantage of. This gesture informs them that you're on to their attempts to deceive. To perform, you move your nose side to side with the index and middle fingers. The movement suggests that something stinks, and you're trying to rid yourself of the odor. So you're doing business, you're talking, and something that the other person, the person that you're doing business with, says or does is like, there's something wrong here. You're either lying or there's something wrong in your figures. I don't trust you. So they'll use this and move their nose from side to side. So it's very similar to the I'm looking at you and I'm watching you, but instead of moving the fingers back and forth, what happens is they're moving it side to side. The I'm looking at you and I'm watching you isn't necessarily considered rude, but this one is indeed a rude hand gesture. So it's another way that we have things that are similar from country to country, culture to culture, but even a slight change gives you a completely different meaning. Hand gestures. In France, this gesture is known as la barbe, or the beard. And the idea of being that the gesture is flashing his masculinity in much the same way that a buck does to show alpha status. It's also used in Belgium, Northern Italy, and Tunisia. So this gesture may not mean anything to some people. It has completely different meanings in different places. But if you are in Belgium, Northern Italy, Tunisia, or France, then you need to be careful with this kind of a gesture. Because again, it's like he's trying to posture. He's showing, I'm the man and you're less than I am. So it is considered to be something rude. And it's, in some ways, it's saying that the one that he is doing this to, especially if it's a male, is less than a man, is not much of a man. And you can try to take it upon yourselves to understand the connotations that I don't need to go into to push it too far, because we do have a couple of youngsters in here. So I want to be careful in how I explain it, but use your imagination. You're probably right. Another thing that from culture to culture, there's a lot of differences, is the way that we think about the feet. Feet and their usage or customs surrounding feet bear striking levels of rudeness around the world. And this is another one, showing the soles of your feet. In many Arab, Muslim, Hindi, and Buddhist countries, showing the soles of your feet is considered disrespectful. And because you see how the feet touch everything, it's considered the dirtiest and lowest part of the body. And because they touch the dirty ground, because they are, sometimes covered with something disgusting, the bottom of the feet are considered absolutely horrible and disgusting. Think back to when in Iraq, they threw the shoe at President Bush. Now, in general, having anything thrown at you was considered rude. And probably as an American, you would think, okay, they threw something at him. But there was a deeper meaning, because for the Arabs, the shoe itself being something disgusting and dirty made it an insult on top of an insult. Okay. Another thing, excuse me. Sorry. Another thing that we need to worry about when it comes to the feet. I remember when I first came here, a lot of cultures, they sit on the ground. And I remember I was sitting on the ground. I was in the room with my family, and my mother-in-law was sitting right across from me, and I started to get a cramp in my foot. Sitting cross-legged is not something that I was, raised doing all the time, and sitting on the floor is something very common here. So I took my feet and I extended them, not thinking there was anything to this at all. The minute I extended them, they were facing my mother-in-law. Imagine how that entire room full of ladies freaked out that I was showing the bottom of my foot to my mother-in-law. So they quickly, one of them came to me, she covered my foot with like a blanket, and I was like, is there a problem? She's like, no. Later on, they explained to me that showing the bottoms of your feet is extremely rude. And I had just extended my feet to my mother-in-law. So you can imagine. Thank God they recognize I come from an entirely different culture. I did not see anything wrong with this at all. And I profusely apologized to my mother-in-law later. But we do need to be cognizant. We need to look, we need to listen, we need to find out about what is considered rude in another country, because it's so easy to offend someone. And if you offend the wrong person, it could have long-lasting effects. Another thing, in most Western countries, It's considered rude to put your feet on the furniture. In Asia and the Middle Eastern countries, it varies, but care needs to be taken for the direction of the feet. So you might be in a culture, like, in the Middle East, you might see some people, they'll sit down and they'll put their feet underneath them on the couch. In the West, you don't do this. You're at somebody's house, you don't lift your feet and put them on the couch, especially if you're wearing shoes. But in the Arab countries, you don't have your feet. You usually you enter a house, you're not wearing anything. So if you sit down on a couch and you put your feet up with you, as long as you're not facing the person with the sole of your feet, you're fine. But if you are doing something like that in a culture where it's allowed, be careful who you're with. If it's Asian or Middle Eastern, if the feet are pointed in that direction and the direction of the person, it could be considered a major act of rudeness. Okay. Also, in general, before you put your feet up on anybody's furniture, ask, is it okay? Can I put my feet up? Can I put my feet on your table? Can I put my feet anywhere? Sometimes, even simple things like you're traveling from one country to another and you're in an airport, you're tired, and there's a table. This table is not like a family table, it's a table for everybody to use. So you may relax yourself a little bit and lift your feet onto the table. This could be considered a major act of rudeness. So we should be, again, very, very careful. We look at the cultures of the people that we're going to be in their country, or those people that we're going to be socializing with, and try to have an idea as to whether or not what we're doing is considered rude or not rude. Feet and shoes also have their own rules. In most Asian and Middle Eastern traditions, as well as Muslim households, wearing outside shoes in the house is frowned upon. They want to keep their house clean. They consider walking in the street, all the dirt from the street should be left in the street. And when you come into someone else's home, you're not going to be carrying the germs, the bacteria, and other forms of filth into that person's house. So shoes that have been worn outside, stay outside. Now, in many of people's homes, you're going to find that they have special shoes for indoors. Or there's some people, they bring their own special. If you know you're going to be in someone's house and you know that they don't like to have shoes in the house, you can bring a pair of shoes that have never been worn outside. And when you enter the house, you remove the old shoes and put on the clean shoes. But a lot of times people, they'll have shoes that you can put on inside the house. So you have your outdoor shoes and your indoor shoes. So that's something that a lot of cultures follow. And whether they're in America or in their country, they continue to follow this. So you should try to understand the cultures. And again, know that if you walk in with your shoes, you're actually insulting them. So that's also rude. Also, in bathrooms, many homes of the Asians, the Middle Eastern, and Muslim households, even if you're wearing indoor shoes in the house, the bathroom has its own set of rules. So when you walk into the bathroom, normally you're going to find another pair of shoes in the bathroom. Those shoes are for use inside the bathroom only. They're not for use outside of the bathroom. So you take off your indoor house shoes, you put on your bathroom shoes, you do whatever needs to be done in the bathroom. When you're leaving, you take off the bathroom shoes and put on your indoor house shoes. Now in Japan, there's an extra sign of politeness is when you take off your shoes, you can actually put the bathroom shoes inside the bathroom and point them in the direction of entering the bathroom. This is so that the next person who puts them on doesn't have to turn them around, and it's just being extra polite. So it's considered that the floor of the bathroom is dirtier than the rest of the floors in the house. So that's why they have the extra special bathroom shoes. And you never, ever, ever go into the bathroom without shoes. You never go in without the shoes that are provided as bathroom shoes. And you don't take those bathroom shoes out of the bathroom into the main house. Now, throughout the world, there's a lot of other things that are considered rude that would be absolutely normal for some people. One culture and another will have something completely different. Example, blowing your nose in public isn't exactly polite in the United States, but it happens all the time and it's not a big deal. If you have to blow your nose, you just go ahead and you blow your nose. It's not a big deal. But in China and Japan, doing so is thought to be extremely rude. And in France, it's considered a form of bad upbringing. So sneezing is one thing. It's an involuntary reflex. It's not something you can do much about. But if you're going to sit there and, blow the nose in public, it's considered rude in China, in Japan, and in France. And it's probably a few other places, but at the very least, I know these for sure. If you're going to blow your nose, do your best to leave the room, blow your nose, and then come back. Or go find a private place, blow your nose, and then come back. That way you will be you won't be insulting anybody, and you won't be considered to be somebody with a bad upbringing. Eating. Eating has a lot of rules. In most Muslim or Muslim-rich countries, meaning places where there's a lot of Muslims, among them India, Pakistan, Malaysia, Bangladesh, the Arabian countries, Africa, African countries, it's considered rude to eat with the left hand. Now, one of the things that came to light that wasn't known by a lot of people is that in many places in the world, people don't use toilet paper. They use water to clean themselves. So when there was a big run during the pandemic on toilet paper, those people from those countries are wondering, why do they need so much toilet paper? Because in actuality, the way that they did it is that they have a system. The right hand is used for eating. The left hand is used for cleaning. So when you go into the bathroom, the left hand is reserved for the bathroom duty. So to keep yourself clean, you use the left hand for the bathroom and the right hand for eating. Also, even something as simple as shaking hands. In these types of countries, it's considered rude to shake hands with the left hand. Why? Because again, this hand is considered less clean than the right hand because the right hand isn't used in the bathroom. Also, with eating, in many Western countries, like in the US and Europe, it's considered rude to leave food on the plate. So for us, as an American, I know that I grew up with my parents telling me, finish all your food. There's people starving in the world. Don't leave anything on your plate. And if you're visiting with someone, many times you have food, and if you leave the food on the plate, it's like telling the people, I didn't like your food. I wasn't happy with what you served me. So this leaving food on the plate in some societies is considered rude. In other societies, like China, eating all your food shows your host that they didn't provide enough food or a filling meal. So you're supposed to leave food on the table. Along with leaving a little bit, it's okay and fine to burp after eating as a compliment to the chef. Yet, a burp in America is considered rude, especially at the table when you're eating. So simple little things. In one country, it's considered not just polite, but it's a compliment if they burp. In another country, like in the United States, someone sitting at the table, they're not supposed to be burping. That is considered rude. So these are things that, again, take into account, think about it, recognize that it's different from country to country. And sometimes you don't even recognize. Example, if you're in the Middle East, they want to be exceedingly polite and generous. So even little things like how much coffee they put in your cup It's considered a way of being polite. In some traditions, there is a small cup that is used for a traditional Arabic coffee. They call gahwa. This coffee is it's a coffee that's made with the bean, and it's cooked a little bit less than the normal coffee bean would be cooked. So it's a little bit greener. So when they're serving you the coffee, in some of the traditions, in some of the places, they're going to serve you almost like a little bit at the bottom. The Bedouins are known for this one. And they'll just serve you a little bit at the bottom and you drink. Then they'll serve you some more and you drink. And then they'll serve you some more and you drink. They give you a little so that they have the opportunity to keep giving you more. And they consider this as their act of generosity. Okay? And you're supposed to keep drinking at least 3 times so that you show them that, yes, I appreciate this, and you're not being rude with them. In other households, in Kuwait, we have the Bedou and the Hadr. The Hadr is the people that are mainly city people, and the Bedou are the ones that traditionally they came from the Bedouins that were living in the deserts. So the Bedouins will give you a little bit in your cup. The Hadr will give you a larger amount in the cup. Why? Because this is considered their way of being generous. So they give you a little bit more and you drink. Then they give you again and you drink. So it's considered by them to be less rude or more generous to give you a larger amount in your cup. On the other hand, the Bedou, when they see this in their mind, it's like, no, do you want me not to drink anymore? Do you want me not to ask for more? You're filling my cup so I don't ask you anymore. So it's a different mentality. So with eating, lots of differences. Where you put your plate, I mean, your fork or your spoon on a plate is different from one culture to the other. In some cultures, if you put it straight up and down, it means I'm not finished eating. In some, if you put it straight up and down, it means I don't like the food. If you put it to the side, it means I'm finished. Every culture has a lot of polite versus rude when it comes to the eating habit, when it comes to the way that we eat. I know I grew up saying that when you're eating, you keep your elbows off the table. In some places, nobody considers this. It's not considered rude. It's not considered not rude. It isn't even thought of in any way, shape, or form. So when I eat, I always try to make sure that my elbows are not on the table. But I see people eating with me, their elbows are on the table. They don't see this as anything in any way, shape, or form as rude. So when we travel, not only do we need to learn other people's traditions, we need to relax a little bit. Don't be so worried if somebody is doing something or saying something that we consider rude, because they may not have it at all in their culture, and they don't know that we're considering this rude at all. Another thing, lateness. Now, every people have their rules. In many Western countries, like in the US and much of Europe, a person should never, ever, ever be early and not more than 10 minutes late. If you think you're going to be late, you should call and inform the one that you're meeting. In contrast, in some places like the Arabian Gulf, South America, Southeast Asia, Southern Europe, and Africa, unless it's work related, time given is just a suggestion. In some cases, time is used to show superiority, with the wait time being relative to the position. So you have a meeting with someone who's extremely rich, who has a lot of businesses, and you are just a simple salesperson trying to get something from them. You might have to wait an hour or longer for a meeting that you were told was going to be at 5 o'clock. And as an American, you're sitting there thinking, he said 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock is 5 o'clock. Why am I sitting here waiting? You're sitting here waiting because in their tradition, your position, your status within his realm is much lower. And if you want to deal with him, you're going to have to deal with him this way. In other situations, I mean, when I first moved to Kuwait, I remember so many times people would tell me, okay, well, The dinner party, it starts at 7 o'clock. Okay, 7 o'clock. I'm an American. I'm not just an American. I'm an American daughter of a military man. 7 o'clock, I was at the door. 7 o'clock, the hostess was still upstairs getting dressed because time is different here. Somebody tells you, I will be there in 10 minutes. I've learned in Kuwait that means 10, multiply it by 2 and add 20 minutes, and that's probably when they'll be there. A lot of times people will tell you things like, oh yeah, I'm on my way, I'm almost there, and they haven't left home yet. Time is very relative and very relaxed in a lot of places in the world. And this takes getting used to if you're a person who's so accustomed to being on time. I remember one time I was living in Florida, my father was living in South Carolina. He told me, I'm coming to visit you on such and such day. And he said, I'll be there at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, knock, knock, knock. He's at my door. And I'm like, oh my God, you made it exactly on time. He's like, of course I did. He said, I was here a half an hour ago, but I wasn't going to show up early. So imagine, my military father was so careful about the time, he wasn't even going to be early for his daughter. So time is very relative, and that's something that before you start to deal with people, that's one of the things that you need to try to figure out. Because is this person on Western time? Is this person on some other kind of cultural time? What kind of time is this person on? What is considered on time where you are? This is now actually whenever I go to an invitation, someone tells me it's going to be at 8 o'clock, it's going to be at 7 o'clock, whatever time they tell me. I always ask them, is this American time or Kuwaiti time? Because if it's American time, you tell me 8, I'll be there at 8. If it's Kuwaiti time, I'll get there eventually, maybe 9, maybe 9:15, because I know that even the hostess is not going to be ready for me if I actually show up at the time that she told me. And the funny thing is that the longer you live within a society, you start to take upon yourself their habits. I find now that even I tell people a certain time because I've been here so long, and most of them have been here so long. We just, I'll be like, 8 o'clock, girls. 8 o'clock goes by, nobody's there. 8:30 goes by, 1 or 2 have started arriving. So lateness is something that you have to go by the actual culture that you're dealing with to realize whether something is considered late or not considered late. Tipping. When we go from one country to another, we have to ask ourselves, do I or do I not tip? Why? Because in some countries like the United States, Canada, and Mexico, it is practically mandatory. 15 to 20% is normal. And if you don't tip, that waiter or waitress is going to think that they did a horrible job, or they're going to think that you're a cheapskate, or they're going to be very, very, very unhappy, especially if they did do a really good job. In other countries, it's uncommon and sometimes considered rude. In China, Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, Switzerland, Australia, Brazil, Denmark, and New Zealand, to name a few, if you leave a tip, you are insulting the person. In some cases, to the point that you're telling them that you are a poor person who doesn't have a salary. So we have to know before we go to the country whether or not this is a place where I'm supposed to tip, where it's okay to tip, where it's rude to tip, so that you don't end up insulting the person by either leaving money or not leaving money, or leaving too much money or not enough money. So basically, these are just a few that I was able to put together for you on what is considered rude and what's not considered rude, and how easy it is for us to have our own cultural preconceptions, our own cultural ideas as to what is considered okay and what's not considered okay, and how easy it is to insult someone without even meaning to, or to be insulted by someone who didn't mean it. So now what I'm going to do is I will open the way for people to ask questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. That way, nobody will be accidentally recorded who doesn't want to be recorded. So are there any questions? Is anyone still here and awake? If you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, if there's no questions, then Sheikh Hassan, have you something to say?
Yes, I would like to introduce the events that we'll be having for the Thai Center next month and after. Then maybe when I'm introducing those events, people will be thinking about questions. So as I said before, TIES is an acronym of tolerance, information, empowerment, and solidarity. So we offer the following services: Arabic classes, tafsir every Monday at 7 p.m., purification and prayer every Wednesday at 10:30 a.m., and stories of the prophets every Thursday at 7 p.m. We are still discussing Jesus, peace be upon him. And when we are done with the stories of the prophets, we'll begin a series on the companions of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We also do have marriage courses and counseling. And in February, we'll be running a course called Conscious Parenting for people who are having problems with their kids, especially the teens. So it will be running every Saturday from 5 to 7 p.m. And next month, inshallah, we'll be having a course, an intensive course on marriage, also on Saturday from 5 to 7 p.m. So if anyone is interested, they are welcome to register. They can visit our website, and we will share the website on the groups. So if there is anyone with questions to either Dr. Sharifa or me, please go ahead, raise up your hand. Any questions? Okay, it means everything is clear, Dr. Sharifa. It means many people have your contacts. Maybe you'll be.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallahu feekum.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.